The Ballad of Bodon. Rudyard Kipling. This is the Ballad of Bodon, erst a pretender to Theba's throne, who harried the district of Allah alone, how he met with his fate and the VPP at the hand of Harendra Mukherjee, Senior Gramashta. GBT. Bodon was a warrior bold, his sword and his rifle were bossed with gold, and the peacock banner his henchman bore was stiff with bullion, but stiffer with gore. He shot at the strong and he slashed at the weak, from the Salween scrub to the Chindwantique. He crucified noble, he sacrificed mean, he filled old ladies with kerosene, while over the water the papers cried, quo. The patriot fights for his countryside. Quo. But little they cared for the native press, the worn white soldiers in khaki dress, who tramped through the jungle and camped in the byre, who died in the swamp and were timid in the mire, who gave up their lives, at the Queen's command, for the pride of their race and the peace of the land. Now, first of the foemen of Bodon was Captain O'Neill of the Black Tyrone, and his was a company, 70 strong, who hustled that dissolute chief along. There were lads from Galway and Louth and Meath who went to their death with a joke in their teeth, and worshipped with fluency, fervor, and zeal the mud on the boot heels of quo. Crook and quo. O'Neill. But ever a blight on their labors lay, and ever their quarry would vanish away, till the sun-dried boys of the Black Tyrone took a brotherly interest in Bodon, and, sooth, if pursuit in possession ends, the bow and his trackers were best of friends. The word of a scout in march by night, a rush through the mist, a scattering fight of Ollie from cover, a corpse in the clearing, the glimpse of a loincloth and heavy jade earring, the flare of a village, the tally of slain, and the bow was abroad on the raid again. They cursed their luck, as the Irish will, they gave him credit for cunning and skill, they buried their dead, they bolted their beef, and started anew on the track of the thief till, in place of the quo. Calends of Greece and quo. Men said, quo. When Crook and his darlings come back with the head. Quo. They had hunted the bow from the hills to the plain, he doubled and broke for the hills again, they had crippled his power for rapine and raid. They had rooted him out of his pet stockade, and at last, they came, when the day star tired, to a camp deserted, a village fired. A black cross blistered the morning gold, and the body upon it was stark and cold. The wind of the dawn went merrily past, the high grass bowed her plumes to the blast. And out of the grass, on a sudden, broke a spurtle of fire, a whirl of smoke, and Captain O'Neill of the Black Tyrone was blessed with a slug in the ulnar bone, the gift of his enemy Bodon. Now a slug that is hammered from telegraph wire is a thorn in the flesh and a rankling fire. The shot wound festered as shot wounds may in a steaming barrack at Mandalay. The left arm throbbed, and the captain swore, quo. I'd like to be after the bow once more. Quo. The fever held him, the captain said, quo. I'd give 100 to look at his head. Quo. The hospital punkas creaked and weird, but Babu Harendra Gramashta heard. He thought of the cane brake, green and dank, that girdled his home by the Dhaka tank. He thought of his wife and his high school son, he thought but abandoned the thought of a gun. His sleep was broken by visions dread of a shining bow with a silver head. He kept his counsel and went his way, and swindled the cartmen of half their pay. And the months went on, as the worst must do, and the bow returned to the raid anew. But the captain had quitted the long-drawn strife, and in far Simawari had taken a wife. And she was a damsel of delicate mold, with hair like the sunshine and heart of gold, and little she knew the arms that embraced had cloven a man from the brow to the waist, and little she knew that the loving lips had ordered a quivering life's eclipse, or the eye that lit at her lightest breath had glared anon in the gates of death. For these be matters a man would hide, as a general rule, from an innocent bride. And little the captain thought of the past, and, of all men, Babu Harendra last. But slow, in the sludge of the Cathan road, the government bullock train toted its load. Speckless and spotless and shining with ghee, in the rearmost cart sat the Babuji. And ever a phantom before him fled of a scowling bow with a silver head. Then the lead cart stuck, though the coolies slaved, and the cartmen flogged and the escort raved. And out of the jungle, with yells and squeals, pranced Bodon. and his gang at his heels. Then belching blunderbuss answered back the Snyder's snarl and the carbine's crack, and the blithe revolver began to sing to the blade that twaunched on the locking ring, and the brown flesh blood where the bayonet kissed, as the steel shot back with a wrench and a twist, and the great white oxen with onyx eyes watched the souls of the dead arise, and over the smoke of the fusillade the peacock banner staggered and swayed. Oh, gayest of scrimmages man may see is a well-worked rush on the GBT. The Babu shook at the horrible sight, and girded his ponderous loins for flight, but fate had ordained that the bow should start on a lone hand grade of the rearmost cart, and out of that cart, with a bellow of woe, the Babu fell flat on the top of the bow. 4 years had Harender served the state, to the growth of his purse and the girth of his pea circumflex et. There were 20 stone, as the tallyman knows, on the broad of the chest of this best of bows. And 20 stone from the height discharged are bad for a bow with a spleen enlarged. Oh, short was the struggle, severe was the shock, he dropped like a bullock, he lay like a block. And the Babu above him, convulsed with fear, heard the laboring life breath hissed out in his ear. And thus in a fashion undignified the princely pest of the Chindwin died. Turn now to Simawar where, lapped in his ease, the captain is patting the bride on his knees, where the wit of the bullet, the wounded man's scream are mixed as the mist of some devilish dream forgotten the sweat of the shambles where the hill daisy blooms and the grey monkey gambols, from the sword belt set free and released from the steel, the peace of the Lord is on Captain O'Neill. Up the hill to Simawari most patient of drudges, the bags on his shoulder, the mail runner trudges. Ampersand quo. For Captain O'Neill, Sahib. 110 rupees to collect on delivery. Ampersand quo. Then their breakfast was stopped while the screw jack and hammer tore waxcloth, split teakwood, and chipped out the dammer. Open-eyed, open-mouthed, on the napery snow, with a crash and a thud, rolled the head of the bow. And gummed to the scalp was a letter which ran, Ampersand quo. In fielding force service and quo. Encampment, the 10th of January Ampersand quo. Dear Sir, I have honor to send, as you said, for final approval, see under Bow's head. Ampersand quo. Was took by myself in most bloody affair. By high education brought pressure to bear. Ampersand quo. Now violate liberty, time being bad, to mail VPP rupees 100 please add Ampersand quo. Whatever your honor can pass. Price of blood much cheap at 100, and children want food. Ampersand quo. So trusting your honor will somewhat retain true love and affection for government. Bullock train, Ampersand quo. And show awful kindness to satisfy me, I am, graceful master, your H. Mukherjee. Ampersand quo. As the rabbit is drawn to the rattlesnake's power, as the smoker's eye fills at the opium hour, as a horse reaches up to the manger above, as the waiting ear yearns for the whisper of love, from the arms of the bride, iron-visaged and slow, the captain bent down to the head of the bow. And e'en as he looked on the thing where it lay twixt the winking new spoons and the napkin's array, the freed mind fled back to the long-ago days, the hand-to-hand scuffle, the smoke and the blaze, the forced march at night and the quick rush at dawn, the banjo at twilight, the burial air mourned the stench of the marshes, the raw, piercing smell when the overhand stabbing cut silenced the yell, the oaths of his Irish that surged when they stood where the black crosses hung o'er the Kutamo flood. As a derelict ship drifts away with the tide, the captain went out on the past from his bride, back, through the springs to the trill of the year, when he hunted the bow from Maloon to Salier. As the shape of a corpse dimmers up through deep water, in his eye lit the passionless passion of slaughter, and men who had fought with O'Neill for the life had gazed on his face with less dread than his wife. For she who had held him so long could not hold him, though a 4-month eternity should have controlled him, but watched the twin terror, the head turned to head, the scowling, scarred black, and the flushed savage red, the spirit that changed from her knowing and flew to some grim hidden past she had never a clue to. But it knew as it grinned, for he touched it unfearing, and muttered aloud, Ampersand quo. So you kept that jade earring? Ampersand quo. Then nodded, and kindly, as friend nods to friend, Ampersand quo. Old man, you fought well, but you lost in the end. Ampersand quo. The visions departed, and shame followed passion. Ampersand quo. He took what I said in his horrible fashion. Ampersand quo. I'll write to Hirendra. Ampersand quo. With language unsainted the captain came back to the bride, who had fainted. And this is a fiction? No. Go to Simawari and look at their baby, a 12-month-old Auri, a pert little, Irish-eyed Kathleen Mavournon. She's always about on the wall of the morning, and you'll see, if her right shoulder strap is displaced, this, gulls upon argent, a bow's head, erased.